This is a zoom-out map of Europe. And this is Kazakhstan, the country it's almost entirely contained within geographically. It makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is that this country, the ninth largest in the world, has fewer people than the US state of New York. In fact, New York City alone has more people than all but one of Kazakhstan's cities. So why are there so few people in this huge country? Welcome to my channel. First, let's look at its geography. Much of Kazakhstan is steppe, desert, and subject to a harsh continental climate. Summers can be hot, winters freezing, and rainfall extremely low. It's land better suited for nomadic herds than for towns. Even today, much of the country is arid or set. Here's an animated Köppen climate map with a precipitation overlay. You can see the vast areas of aridity and semi-aridity, and here's what that looks like on the ground. Arid steppe and desert landscapes stretching as far as the eye can see. There's not much here to attract people or hold on to them. So how did the Soviets go about changing this in the 20th century? Well, they started by killing millions. I'm not kidding. Check out this map. It shows the location of Kazakh nomads in the early 20th century and the borders of Soviet Russia. These people were killed during the Soviet Union's forced collectivization of agriculture in the 1920s and 30s, when their way of life was outlawed. Those who survived often died anyway from the resulting famine. But later, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev decided to try something different. In the 1950s, he launched the Virgin Lands campaign to turn the barren, underpopulated west of Kazakhstan into farmland. Millions of hectares were plowed up and planted with crops. And it did bring in some settlers, but the soil quickly eroded and most of the projects collapsed. Today, most of Kazakhstan's 20 million people live in a handful of cities in the southeast and center of the country. Vast areas of the west and north remain nearly empty. Here's a heat map of population density overlaid on a map of Kazakhstan. You can see the two main population centers and how they appear on the landscape. For comparison, here's a map showing the population density of Europe. The difference is stark. Almaty, the largest city, has around 2 million people and was once the capital. Now known as Astana, the new capital, it's home to around 1.5 million people. Other large cities include Karaganda, Shymkent, and Taraz. But after that, it's mostly small towns and villages, or just empty settlements. So why does Kazakhstan have these huge population gaps? A big reason is its economy. The country's oil and gas wealth is concentrated in a few fields in the west and southwest. And while they bring in billions of dollars and employ thousands of people, the profits don't trickle down or spread out across the rest of the country. Most of the work in these fields is also done by foreign contractors. In fact, only one city in Kazakhstan or Taro has any significant foreign population. Here's a map of oil fields in the Caspian Sea, the region encompassing Kazakhstan and 5 other countries. You can see the fields located near Kazakhstan's west coast. Because of this, Western Kazakhstan sees the highest population density outside the main urban centers. The same is true of the north, near the Ural River, where there's more industry and agriculture. But the remainder of the country remains relatively empty. And that includes the enormous swath of steppe that's home to the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the world's first and largest spaceport. This is where Soviet and now Kazakh rockets take off into the vast emptiness of space. And the emptiness on the ground, too. So is Kazakhstan doomed to be mostly empty forever? Well, perhaps not. There are signs that the country is growing and changing. More young people are living in cities, more businesses are being created, and more people are using the internet. But these changes aren't happening fast enough to overcome the country's geography and history. After all, oil and gas fields can be worked by a relatively small number of people, and much of the country's territory is simply not suited for large-scale agriculture or industry. The climatic conditions and soil quality limit what can be produced and therefore how many people can live there. In the end, Kazakhstan's emptiness is both a challenge for development and a strategic asset. If the country can find ways to use its empty spaces wisely, it could become a major player in industries like space exploration and renewable energy, or it could continue to be an economic and population backwater. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Country Size and Population. If you want to see more episodes, check out the playlist linked below. And remember to subscribe to stay in the loop.